All right, I'd like to call the May 27th Budget Committee meeting to order. First item on the agenda is to approve the Budget Committee meeting minutes for March 17th, April 28th, and May 12th. I hope everyone's had a chance to look at them. They were posted online. If everyone's had a chance to look at them,
I'll motion to approve the minutes.
great. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a second. Any further discussion? Holly, can we get a roll, please?
Yes, was it Ms. Rodway that seconded? Was it? Director Stroh? Aye. Director Blackwell?
Aye.
Mr. York?
Aye.
Mr. Frazier?
Aye.
Director Halpern?
Aye.
Director Hayes? Aye. Director Wilson?
Aye.
Mr. Reel?
Aye.
Ms. Rodway? Aye. Ms. Klopatek? Aye. Director Canchola?
Aye.
Mr. Stobie?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Great. Our next item of business is our 2025-26 budget framework. I'll turn that over to Dr. Spitzer and Jason.
Excellent. Thank you, everyone. We will be showing the slides up here. We might not be able to show them here, so if you're sitting with your back, you can look, or look on your computer. But we're just going to set up our intention for this evening and just review a few things with you through our slides.
Next slide, please.
That's it.
Tonight, after our discussion and our fiscal and legislative updates, you may choose to approve the 25-26 budget. If you need more time, we do have June 2nd as a scheduled meeting, or we will come back if needed. On June 16th, we will have a public hearing, and the board may choose to adopt the budget. And then, if needed, we have June 23rd, if necessary, where the board will adopt the budget.
And just a reminder real quickly for your Budget Committee roles and responsibilities. Next slide, please. So you have received a proposed budget. You have reviewed, analyzed, and tonight we will discuss the proposal. You can consider any additional input and deliberate. Listen to the community. Tonight we have opportunity for public input as we do every session. And you will recommend a level of spending appropriations and tax rates amounts for the board to adopt. The committee does not alter district goals or policies. That's done through our school board and also through a large interaction with our community. It's set by our strategic plan. The committee would not set salaries, benefits, or contract terms for our employees. We currently have a contract. We are in contract negotiations both with our classified and certified unions, and that is done at that table and then brought to the board. You do not set staffing levels or make organizational structure decisions. Again, that's kind of dictated by our strategic plan and something the board holds me accountable to doing in order to meet the goals. And you do not decide whether or not a program or service should be provided, although it can be brought up as a discussion item for the board to consider into the future. But that wouldn't be something that we would be making a decision on at this time related to the budget. So what are the options of the Budget Committee? So again, tonight is the first time that you have the option to first approve as proposed. So after our discussion, you may look at this and say, this is great, we're approving it, we like it. You could increase the appropriations, assume we will get more. So you may have a discussion tonight and you say, you know, I actually think that state school fund's going to be higher. Or I actually think that we are going to expect more revenue per pupil, or however assumption you might assume. So you could increase the appropriations. You can also increase the appropriations in certain functions. So you might say, I see that you were going to spend $4 million here in function 24-26, but I want you to move $500,000 over here. So that's within the purview of the Budget Committee. You could decrease appropriations, assume that we will get less. So you could say, you know, I've been watching an 11.4 general fund seems kind of high. I'd like you to adjust the budget, the entire budget down, and I would like for you to cut an additional $1 million out of the budget. Or you could ask me to decrease appropriations in certain categories. So you might say, you know, the high school, we'd like to decrease that amount that's given to the high school as a category, and we'll put it over here with, I don't know, talented and gifted, or what have you. So again, that's within the purview, those function level appropriations. And again, move funds between functions. So I made this little handy dandy thing, and I will show it to you again, because this is the this is the challenging thing. So this is actually page 65, and this is actually what the Budget Committee does. So on page 65, it says talented and gifted. And then if you go to the total function of 1210, it says 23,870. What you're looking at is we have, as a team, decided that we would propose to you that we would spend 23,870 towards talented and gifted. That's a function. The details, if you pull it up, the details in the object, right? That's how I'm choosing to spend to meet the goals of the district, but the actual function is what you have influence over, not the object. We show it to you for thank you. I'm like, translation? No, it's not translation. It's been a long day. Transparency, but the actual function is just those little bold lines. So on this page 69, we have talented and gifted structured learning centers, out-of-district programs, and home instruction. So it's just the title and then the total. So again, you can ask to have funds moved between functions. If you think that there's too much or too little, you can ask for things to be moved. And if you say, I don't want anything moved, but I want you to put more, you would be asking us to assume that we're going to get more from one of our revenue sources. Okay? All right. So again, at the end, you can approve, increase, decrease, or move fund and functions. If you get to the end of tonight and you say, I don't know, we need more time to think, we have a meeting set next Monday for our budget committee to come together again, and you can give us more questions, you can sit with us and have conversations, but eventually we need the budget committee to approve the budget so then it can move on to the next step to have the board adopt the budget. Okay, so after budget committee approval, then the board adopts it. This sets the spending limits for the board and administration. And then after the adoption, the board can make adjustments if major changes occur that do not exceed 10% of the adopted budget. So if the state school fund pops up, we can make those adjustments without bringing the committee together. If something magical happened and we got 14% more from our state school fund, we'd bring our budget committee back together to have that conversation to make the appropriations.
So to reiterate, you set the maximum amount appropriated for us to spend by major fund and function. If we were to receive more revenue, we would have to come again and say, how would you like us to spend this? Or we would leave it in and it would become a part of the ending fund balance. But just so you know, we only have permission to spend what you give us appropriation to spend by fund and function.
And I will add as we head to the next slide, this is a moving Jenga puzzle that we've talked about. This morning we heard from the state that our projection for our Title I funds that are coming from the federal government are supposed to be down by 7%. Now, it gets adjusted, so we'll get an adjustment again in the fall, in October, it could go, I don't know. So we made our budget based on our best guess, which could be 7% down once we hit the ground running in the fall. We won't spend the money that you've approved if we don't get it. So this is the maximum amount that you've agreed to allow us to spend. But it's a Jenga puzzle, we're watching the actual revenue adjustments in real time.
Can we ask questions at any time? Sure. Okay. You said that once we approve the budget, if and when that happens, the administration, I'm going to call, that's what, you can change the budget by 10%? Is that what I heard you say?
With the board's approval.
Still with the board, not the budget, but the board's approval?
Correct.
Okay.
If we were to break out of the 10%, we would have to reconvene the budget committee.
Okay.
10% of that fund and functions total.
Okay, and then, so follow-up. For instance, you just said Title I could be decreased by 7%, so then we're still working with that, you can increase it by 10%, but not just Title I, everything.
Yeah, so the budget sets the maximum
Right.
amount. So if we got more money and it was beyond 10%, we'd have to bring everyone back together. If we got 9% more, we could work with the board to decide, but if we get less, then we just don't spend it.
Okay.
Okay, strategic plan. These are 5 areas of our strategic plan, and we use our funds to make sure we make movement in these goals that have been set by our community and adopted by our board. For a legislative update, so we had our June economic revenue forecast. It was released on the 14th. Overall, it didn't look grand. The framework, the co-chair's framework funds investments, and the forecast was a loss of $450 million. We also lost about $550 million in discretionary general funds, so decrease generally in all areas. They are not predicting that the state reserves will be an option this session, mostly due to the educational, which includes the Educational Stability Fund and the Rainy Day Fund. Because it's the first part of the biennium and Congress hasn't adopted their budget, they're not assuming that Oregon State will pull in some of those set-asides at this point. So we are hoping and advocating for that $11.4 billion, which has been kind of the number that the governor lobbed and the one that we've heard. We are also predicting at this point, or hearing, that they are predicting that there won't be an increase in the cap for special education or additional money for high-cost disability. So our budget reflects that. But we were hoping for additional funding, and we were hoping especially for that increase to the special ed cap or high-cost disability, but that doesn't look promising at this point.
We have received, since we met last, an increase, a yield of $738,000. Addition in revenue came from 2 sources, the 23-24 year-end rec. When we reconcile as a state, some of it came from that, and the other portion came from this year, 24-25. The state gave all districts a change in per child payment, as well as the amount of children plus weights that we get paid for. So those two together yielded in our projection an additional $738,000.
Which has been folded in. Yeah. Which has been folded in. We were predicting around $1 million, and so our ending fund balance is up by about $1 million, and we still think our ending fund balance will be about on track for that.
So all departments and schools have been asked to complete their spending by May 15th, and we are now in the process of making sure all invoices are paid and things are closed out. So as we move closer to the end of the year, we can get tighter and tighter on what the ending fund balance will actually be from 24-25. We will also pay 3 payrolls the end of June, July, and August for those that get paid, that work during the school year and are paid over 12 increments.
And that's really exciting for us because we usually pay people in June, then in July, then in August. So paying them early allows us to kind of tidy our books and close those up and have a stronger understanding of our ending fund balance earlier, which allows us to make sure we're right.
Didn't come on. Can we go back to the other slide? Full of questions. So you were able to make the final payroll for the year for June, July, and August to be paid in June. And why was that again? Is that because of the $738K?
No, that was an agreement we made with our union. Our contract used to say that they got paid June, July, and August, and we created a memorandum of agreement that allows us to pay them out earlier.
Okay, thank you.
And our heart in that is to try to get our ending fund balance exactly right so we can put it to work next year.
Was that a mandatory thing, or was that an optional thing in the past?
They had the option, yes.
Okay, and now it's mandatory, the payout in June.
Yep. Okay, sure.
So does that, when I think of me paying bills, I'd rather have it over, spend it, or save it over a period of time, but because we want to finish our budget and make sure everything reconciles at the end, that's why it's better for the school district to do it once instead of over 3 months? Is that what I'm hearing?
Yes, and it is something that we worked with our union on.
That's right.
Yeah,
Okay.
they get paid 3 different paychecks. If they have an automatic deposit, it gets dumped in their account, right? They get paid 3 separate ones, but it is advantageous for us in order to do that. But it's part of our contract, so we did agree with the union, and they work with their members.
Thank you.
Okay, we should, before we dive into questions, we should probably see if there's any public input.
Okay, well then we'll just dive right into the 61 questions that Jason received.
Yes, so we're going to go over the questions, and you probably also have other questions. First of all, thank you so much for those of you who sent your questions in advance. It really helped us to be able to dig into some account numbers and get some specifics for you. Again, there were lots of questions on objects. We appreciate the transparency, but just a reminder that as a committee, you're looking at the total function. So sometimes when we go to allocate things, we do a couple things. We pull what our current expenses are, because that's going to be the best estimate of our future expenses. And then we kind of look historically, and then we also work with our department leads to kind of say what's on the horizon that maybe we're not aware of. So we're in these conversations. So even though sometimes it might look like a bump here or a dip here, it's a lot of work, and it's comprehensive. So we have 61 questions. It's 10 pages, and there are probably additional questions that you have. So we thought we would try to just go through them, and I told Ray, as he sees everyone's eyes glaze over, maybe we take a break, or if you want to speed up or slow down or just read them. We're not exactly sure the best method, so we're going to give it a go. Okay, yes. Okay, first one. PTSO funds. So this is our Parent Teacher Association funds. So they're not consistent through the district, and that is true. Our PTSO they're 501(c)(3)s, and they're not run by the district. So we don't really have any jurisdiction about how much is gathered or how they spend them. Policy KH does describe the guidance for how we receive gifts from the PTSOs. So if they chose to buy something for the school, there's parameters around that, but how they choose to, or whether or not they keep them or share with a neighboring school or what have you, that isn't something that we typically engage in. I know there are districts where they have a fundraiser and then 10% goes in a kitty and then they kind of distribute them out to schools. At this point, that isn't something that our district does, but we do have meetings with our PTSOs, so we could bring that up.
Okay, musical instruments, was that okay? My mic is on. Thank you. The question is just about if it's building funds or district funds, and those are the same funds, right? We do allocate some funds to buildings so that principals can decide how they use funds, and it might be for batteries for an instrument, or it might be for something that they need for the school. Certainly, anytime there's a need that's above and beyond what the principal has planned for, because principals also do a budget for their year coming up, then they reach out to us and we figure out what maybe needs to be done. A good example of that for musical instruments in particular is we've just bought some guitars for our high school because they're going to semesters next year and they needed a guitar class. And so we said, yep, we'll get you some guitars. And we knew that they had not budgeted for that within their building funds.
And just stop us as we go if you have questions or questions related. So number 3, CASE is district sponsored. What does that mean? So CASE is a charter school and it was created by the district. So we have district sponsored and the district hosted. So hosted, like we're hosting a guest, so that would be ACA and Springwater. But CASE was created by the district. CASE staff are actually district staff, whereas other charters are not district staff. They employ their own folks. Our CASE staff are included in professional development, curriculum adoptions, et cetera. The 7,000s do represent their budget. So according to the contract we have with CASE, they receive 80% pass-through for students that are in middle school through 8th grade and 95% through high school, and that's in charter law. They get their own integrated grant fund, so SIA, high school success, et cetera. And Sarah supervises all of our secondary principals, including Mike Stead at CASE, so she works with him on his budget. Items in the 100 that include CASE are special education staffing, so we as the host or the sponsor serve our students that need special education services. Curriculum, professional development, costs of building use, et cetera. So we own the building that CASE is in. It was not included in the bond, but we do improvements. So the whole new vestibule that came the last couple of years, that was in the last bond. We've bought some cameras for them. We're working with them kind of on their needs to cool the upstairs. And so we can use maintenance funds to improve the building. We can use construction excise tax money to improve the building. But it is a big conversation about what does that building need and do we keep it? And so that'll be part of our long-range facility planning work as well. Yeah.
And I would add that the district did seismic upgrades to the single story that's attached to, not attached, well, it's attached to the 3-story building, but and a new roof on there since I've been on the board.
I had a question about that. So I was the one that asked that question, and my concern with it was there's a lot of aging areas within the city, especially in McLaughlin area, and the city seems more or less kind of like a historic landmark, in my opinion, just the age of the building and the history that it has in the city. So I wanted to know, particularly because I live right next to the school, if there was any kind of renovations being planned, and if there was, what type could be included, and then also to say, hey, could we do something with the students of that school to help kind of bring the building to light in terms of it being a historic landmark, to say, hey, could we do like a project where we say, hey, you know, let's get all the kids to buy in on what they would like displayed. There's a whole huge blank wall on one side of the school. We have several murals that have been built throughout the city. I thought it would be a cool idea to include the kids in a project within the school or even within the district, saying, hey, you know, choose your artwork, or choose, you know, some way to kind of bring the kids into preserving the landmark and also putting their mark on it. You know, if they get together and they make a decision about what to do, I thought it would be a really neat way to involve the kids so that they're able to, you know, hey, maybe 20 years from now when their kids go to school, they can say, hey, yeah, I was there when we picked the artwork that went on the building. So that was my thinking about that, was if you are intending to keep it, it would be really neat to use some funds to go towards the beautification, also, you know, also restoration or anything else that might come about. But I thought it would be cool for the kids.
And I just want to say real quick, sorry, Michael. You mentioned it, but I think it's important to say, again, publicly, loudly, that we cannot use bond funds for kids, because I think there's been a lot of public confusion about that. So I think it's important that people understand that the case was not included in the bond, and so we cannot use bond money to renovate it.
So we are using some funds for that. We're hoping to use CTE funds. Right now the chiller is down in Jackson Seat building. Tom has worked with some engineers to figure out a way to get around that this summer and to mitigate that. It basically build a area outside where the boiler is now, and so it'll take some engineering, I'll say, because it's very old, and so they're going to work on that. That's always the case with murals. So murals within the city have to be approved by the city. There is a process. Often that's done by artists. But you know, we've worked with artists and residents before. Usually that's the school that initiates that, and then they ask for approval. And when it come on, it went through a process like that. They got a mural that went up outside their art class, and then down the hall by the gyms as well, internal. This one, because it would be street facing, would include the city as well, so it goes through a process with us. There's just a lot of things we think about when it comes to that as the community changes, you know, or whoever's on the mural, if there's a person, those types of things. So, yeah, so that's always a possibility, but typically comes from the school and the student life. Yeah, we've been open to it since we've approved it.
It's a fun idea. I like it. Happy to pass that on to the principal. He'll know how to reach you, right?
Yeah.
Okay, number 4 is about, there's $300 for a tax deduction that teachers can use, but they have to have their receipts, and it tends to not have a big impact, I'm reading from this. So I think the question is there a line item in the budget which would allow an increase for the amount teachers can use to supply their classrooms? So we basically take and allocate a certain amount, like per the number of kids in a building, so that larger schools have more funds, what have you. They also have other funds like Title I funds. Some have additional grant funds for some supplies. So for example, early literacy grant, as that funds are coming through, we can utilize those for things that classrooms might need. Leveled readers, additional resources for reading and instruction, which kind of offset what we might have to spend general fund monies for. So every principal sort of works on their budget. Hopefully they're working with their leadership team to kind of decide. But I think in our conversation, we were like, we could do a better job of helping our principals talk with their teachers about those funds, how they're used, how to access them. We weren't absolutely certain that that's happening in every building. So that's something that we can work towards. And like Sarah shared earlier, we have some resources. So if there's a need, we had some new teachers at a school, I think it was last year, who were like, we have like no rugs for our classroom for our little friends to gather and do like read alouds. So that was kind of a bigger expense than what the principal was expecting. So we used some of our supply money at the teaching and learning level to help offset that cost. So, and sometimes it's just planning, right? We know we can't afford it this year, but maybe we can afford it for the fall. So we work with our principals on that too.
Got a question. So it's about just what you said, our principals talking to teachers about their classroom needs, and they have a $300 tax deduction. Is that a contract also, teacher contract? Is that, I mean, the issue of principals talking to teachers or teachers talking to principals about those needs, and that, are the teachers aware that those funds could be available and all they had to do was ask, but they don't want to ask?
So I think we're mixing two
Okay.
things here. There is a discretionary budget in each building that principals are aware of that are set by a per student dollar amount.
Got it. Mm-hmm.
So they designate, the principal designates how that money should be budgeted. That's reflected in this and gives it to me, and I upload it. So that's in here. The issue of the $300 credit is a tax on the personal income tax, I believe is the question. So each teacher can, go ahead.
Well, I don't want to interrupt when you're
Go
done.
ahead.
Well, that was my question originally, because I asked teachers at every elementary school who I'm friends with, I said, so how does that work for you? And almost all of them said they try to use that $300 deduction, and most times it doesn't work out because the standard deduction is more, so you take more of that. So those teachers are out $300 every year. So my question was, is there a way the district could help? Because they never know each year, okay, I'm going to spend this money, cross my fingers, and April 15th comes by and, no, I'm out that money. And there's no remedy for that. And, pardon me?
Because it's a tax, and everybody's individual taxes are different based on that.
But teachers are using
Yeah.
their personal money
Yeah, oh, yeah, I
to
get
supply
that
their
part.
classroom.
Yeah, okay. Sounds like an issue. All right, with the union. Thank you.
I think, too, just again, publicly, I would say if teachers are spending a lot of money on things that they need for their classroom, they should talk to their principal, and see if they can get reimbursed for that, even if it's right now and they spent money earlier in the year.
The answer is usually no.
But then they also
Permanent
have the PTSO as well, and that's what the PTSO funds are there for.
Right, and they
as
use,
well,
and they
so,
use that
yeah.
also.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, they exhaust PTSO, ask for more, the answer is no, and so they use their own money.
Yeah. Okay, let's talk about field trips. So we actually cannot ask families to pay for field trips because it's an educational experience. It's part of their education. It's a free and appropriate public education. And so everything that we do that's part of the educational experience and the standards is to be given to every student. And so we can say, parents, if you would like to contribute, we'll take $10, so we'd really appreciate it, but we cannot require payment.
For buses, so many of you might remember a couple years ago, we had real budget buses crisis. We were short often. So I think this last year we've had 2 days where we had 1 day of a missed bus and a half day. So we're really excited about that. Sabrina and her team are working really hard to hire more drivers. This is basically because our buses run 3 routes in the morning and 3 routes in the afternoon. So if they take kids to a field trip, they have to come back so they can run their routes. We have between 5 and 8 subs that can fill in at times, and Sabrina and her team have done a really good job wooing some former bus drivers into being field trip drivers. So I think as we continue to hire, there's been just a shortage of bus drivers in the last couple years. Being somebody with a CDL is highly sought after. It's not nearly as fun as being a school bus driver. Yeah, that we're working on it. It's better. But yeah, that is the limiting factor. So we know that that's a concern, and we're continuing to work on them. In some extreme cases, we just charter buses. It's much more expensive, so we try not to do that. But sometimes that's the only option.
Okay. So number 7 is this is kind of a follow-up question of just the first-year teacher extra fund. So again, there are times when we provide extra money for people who need extra things. Sometimes teachers come with all the donated books they've ever gotten from every grandparent, aunt, et cetera, and sometimes they come with nothing, and so we know that, and we want them to have classroom libraries. So that's an example of something that we might be able to help the principal either find the funds in their budget or, use some district, maybe if it's a title school, we can use some title funds, et cetera. Do you have a question?
I have a question about that. So I'm just thinking out loud, ideas of ways to fundraise beyond just here, sell these chocolate bars, or, here's a magazine and pick some things and part of the proceeds go there. Anything that involves community involvement excites me. So the idea of putting together something prior to the start of the school year, something particularly for helping out first-time teachers or teacher salaries, where we say, hey, let's go and do a bake sale at Tumwata. And we bring in all the people who want to contribute, and we say, all right, so we're gonna donate. All of these bakers are gonna donate a portion of the proceeds are gonna go to the new teachers for the district or for that particular school. I think that would be a way to involve the community more and let them know that there's a need, and then also kind of bring them together and get to know. I know getting to know family members and other parents has gotten extremely more difficult after COVID because everybody just kind of shut themselves up in their house. And I do personally feel pretty isolated from the other parents.
Cool idea. Yeah, we'll pass that on as well. Thank you. So then the next one is new teacher and a new administrator mentoring. And we partner with McCren, which is a regional education network, to provide mentoring both for administrators that are new and for teachers that are new. And we will be continuing to do that. I was just at a training last week where we heard that they will continue to do that. And so that's something that we'll continue to offer.
I would just say before we move off, and I'm saying this publicly for anybody who's listening as well, I think that there's a long history of we have no money in our district. We have money. So I would just encourage principals and teachers that if there are things that you need to be talking to your principal, having your principal talk to Sarah or Lisa, because we do have funds for things. We don't, we have funds for things. We don't have funds for everything, but we have funds for things. And I think sometimes, as a former teacher, sometimes there are things I wanted to do that were more fun than educational. We are required to spend our money on educational resources. So if I, as a teacher, wanted to spend my personal funds on fun things, that's cool. Or if the PTA said, hey, we're going to give you $100 this year or $200 this year, sometimes PTAs do that. We do have restrictions on our funds that come in through the district because they're taxpayers' money and we have to spend them in certain ways. And we have requirements on foods and all sorts of things. So just ask. We're happy to help people understand the different revenue resources and how we might be able to support them.
Should also note that there are limitations on what PTAs and PTOs can offer teachers because they're nonprofit organizations. So there are rules around what they can donate as well.
And I think that on top of that, having that message sent out to all teachers, having experienced firsthand, new curriculum. Hey, I need new whiteboards. I need new this. I need new that. And the Amazon bill that comes with that. Having that heard or having that message relayed, from the top down across the board, and say, hey, new teachers, existing teachers. Here's what you have or we have potentially available. Come talk to us, because I don't hear a lot of that either from my personal experience, and also talking with other teachers as well. It's again coming out of their pocket, and it's almost like I'm afraid to ask. Let them know that it's there, available, and be willing to have those conversations so they're not thinking, oh, they're going to tell me no, so I may not even bother to ask. But it might help individuals.
Number 9 on page 55, what is the reason for a 50% increase in 600 other funds to the general fund? This was previously coded to risk on page 124. Towards the bottom, you'll see a reduction, and we moved it to page 86 towards the bottom.
Question 10. So on page 59, there is capital outlay $6 million, which looks like to be bond funds. Can you speak to the method of allocating? This could be its own series of lessons this evening, and indeed our bond director kind of gave this last time. So there is a bond program website, and it's also reviewed by the Citizen Bond Oversight Committee. And so basically, in a nutshell, the funds were set up, originally the allocations were just kind of based on a per square footage, and then as David started working with our with OTAC, they started looking at like what are the actual needs of this building and this footage, and so they created kind of a larger proposal for how much, and then added on contingency funds. And so they have mapped out kind of a 3-year, we have to spend 85% of bond proceeds by February 2028. So there is a map of how much things might need to be spent out. And so that comes from that longitudinal plan. And if you look in the bond fund page, which is 600, I got it wrong. 400, you'll see some contingencies, because if we're ahead of schedule, then we might be spending the next 2 to 3 months. So it's sitting there in contingency in case we need to move it up if our bond moves faster than we thought.
And I'll say we've had a lot of discussions about making sure that all the funds are available in each phase, so that the schools in phase 3 are not missing out on funds because we had overruns in phase 2. So those boxes are being checked.
So number 11, partly, yes, I mean, we do staff our schools based on ratios, and so when a school has decreased enrollment, they do get fewer FTE generally, but when we're talking about classified, we're actually talking about hours. And so the FTE represents an 8-hour person, and very few of our classified staff are 8-hour people. So this is not people, and when you think about the difference of, it's really the difference of about 8 hours here. It's very minor, and it could be because they lost an hour of health room assistant, or they lost somebody, wanted to work 1 less hour next year, or something. Like, there's a lot of reasons that. So it might look funny, but it's really probably not a huge big deal. Then the next one, number 12, we did decide, someone asked about the talented and gifted on page 69. We did decide this year to have a district tag person, a stipended position. It's just a stipend, right? It's a teacher in our midst. But we really decided that with all the rules and liabilities in tag, we needed to make sure we had someone tracking all that and making sure we're paying attention and that people are trained properly, et cetera. And so we do have someone doing that this year. And that's what you see there is the stipend difference with all the associated payroll costs.
All right, 13, 14, and 15. So I brought a little handout. It's in your packet. And this is something actually also that our union asked us about in our contract negotiations. So this is a document that we've shared with them as well. So we just pulled it at the end of April and just kind of gathered information about our class sizes. So we do a 28.5 to 1 ratio, which basically means that's just our out of the gate standard setting. So if you had 285 students, you divide it by 28.5, you get 10 staff. So that's kind of our baseline. If you're in elementary school, the kids don't come in those little packages. So sometimes you'll get like a kinder class of 30, and you're like, kinder 30, wow. So we have SIA funds that we can utilize, and we target them mostly to K2 to keep those class sizes small, but we've also targeted them throughout our system. So for example, this last year, we didn't have a lot of kids that were engaging at the middle school in band and choir. We wanted to make sure that we invested in band and choir, so we gave additional SIA funds, which is part of a well-rounded education, to try to engage more students in some of those musical arts at the middle school. So we can utilize our SIA funds to kind of target things. But if you look at these slides and you can look through them, I mean, you can see our classes in kinder, kind of on the first page, the bottom graph, elementary class sizes. Our class sizes in kinder are, even though we start at 28.5 to 1, most of them are small, right? We have 9 that are between 21 and 23, 2 that are 18, 20, and 27 that are between 24 and 26. So you can kind of see, as they get older, there are a few that are in larger class sizes. For some reason, everybody that moved into Oregon City had a 4th grader this year. We don't know what happened. Those classes just continued to grow. They didn't look like that in the fall, but they kind of creeped up as the year progressed. The next page is just kind of an elementary class size. You can kind of see the distribution here. Middle school class size, again, this is the core for English language arts, Spanish language arts, math, and electives. Our electives tend to be a little bit larger. And as our principals make those schedules, they're looking at like the needs of the students and the qualifications of their teachers in order to allocate resources. You can kind of see the average on the next slide. First slide is a graph, second one is kind of a chart there. And then you can kind of see the distribution. So you can see down below, like band shoots up, choir shoots up. There's some of those classes, PE shoots up. So some of those classes that just tend to be a little bit bigger. And then you can kind of see the distribution, the bar graphs at the bottom for middle school, and then the actual numbers. Some of those class sizes of 1 to 5, some of those are classes for our special education students. Sometimes it all has to go in the system, right? So sometimes it would be like you're an aide for a class, or maybe you have ELD, English Language Development, and you're English Language Development 1, and you have 4 kids in your class, but you're paired with English Language Development 2, and there's 6 kids in your class. So there's 10 in the class, but they show up as different classes, right? So that's kind of the distribution of middle school. Secondary class sizes, also down below for Oregon City High School, Case, and Oxlaw. And then on the back side of that page, you can kind of see the size at each of the school. So we tend to see a little bit larger classes at the high school, especially for AP classes, PE classes, choir, the AP US Government Politics class, student governments. We kind of pulled them. Again, under 15 examples, we see sometimes those like German 3 and German 4. So they're in the same space, but maybe they're working at different levels. Marketing lab, entrepreneurship, that's another class that's kind of paired together. The teacher pairs them together because they're kind of working on individual projects. And so there's the breakdown there as well. So wanted you to have that. How will the potential FTE cuts impact the average class sizes? We are staying true to our 28.5. We're hoping that that stays true as we watch the state funding, but that's our goal, is to try to be as boring as possible and just maintain what we've done. But we would expect more to be closer to the 28.5, just because we're trying to get real tight on that. When you have sort of these bubbles of classes, there are times where we've had classes and we look and we're like, okay, there's a 23 and a 24, especially at elementary. We have 2 split classes this year. We may have more split classes next year. I taught a split. I personally like it, but I know that it's a challenge for some staff. So we'll just kind of see where the numbers fall, but we would expect that we would have more 28.5. Are there discrepancies between subjects in middle and high school? And again, you can kind of dig in this, but mostly what we see is kind of those classes where more kids can engage, theater arts, choir, band, guitar, where you might have more than a 28.5 to 1 ratio.
If I may, this is awesome.
Yeah.
I don't know who did this, but it's great. Are you sharing this with your staff?
Yeah, we've shared it with principals.
So
Yeah.
teachers have this?
Principals have it,
Mm-hmm.
and the union has it.
Oh, okay, good. This is great. I mean, geeks like me would really be this.
Teachers should probably have it too.
Okay. Okay.
We've got about 5 minutes left. I want to see where everybody's at on questions and how we're feeling before 7 o'clock. 5 minutes till 7. What's that?
We're just checking to see,
Yeah.
is this
No.
working for you? Do you need a break?
Yeah.
Do you? Just keep going? Okay.
Okay, I'm next then. Okay, so professional development. Typically, we get Title II, which is all for professional development. And we have no idea if we're getting it or not right now. And depending on the day, I would have a different answer for you. We're getting it, we're not getting it. We might get it, we'll get some, we won't get, So we're not counting on it. And instead, we're going to try to really use our professional development days that are already set aside really, really, really wisely. And we will continue to try to focus on our core curriculums. And we know professional development is important, so we definitely want to provide whatever we need to for those things. However, if it's something like an out of the area conference, for example, that's probably not something that we're going to approve for next year, assuming that we don't have funding. We're also doing quite a bit of professional development this summer. That's kind of just if you want to come hang out with us for a couple hours, we'll give you some PDUs and teach you some cool things. So hopefully some people want to do that.
Please remind me where the school resource officer's funding is, page 124, in risk. The district pays half of the FTE for one of the SROs. Page 66, 11110112, we see a decrease in FTE, but an increase in funding of classified salaries. Budgeted positions are based on two particular points in time within the FTE of the actual person at that moment. The position could change from year to year, and the steps in the columns could change. The COLA obviously contributes. So just know that when we're comparing FTE from a snapshot in February of 23 to one of, or 24 to one of 25, the actual people may have changed. And then their steps and their columns and the COLA. So that's the reason why in this particular case we have a reduction in FTE but an increase in salary. So who's in those two budgets could be different.
And that's something that we look at too when we notice something like that. We go, well, who are those people? And then okay, we see, So we don't just assume it's that until we check. So I don't have a head count for the subs. I can tell you that along with the professional development answer before, one way that we'd like to use subs is some professional development so that we can give people release time. But also we have a lot of staff accessing paid leaves, which they are entitled to, and we need to plan for. So we need to make sure that we're ready in the event that we can fill every sub position. Something for you to know is that we cannot usually fill every single sub position that we need in the district. So what we could have paid this year, if we were able to fill and had enough subs, is more than what we actually paid out. So we want to budget as if we can fill those sub positions. And also we're on a sub campaign. So if you know anyone who might want to sub, classified or licensed, we sure would like to talk to them. Oh, me again. This one made me realize, I was happy to see this one, and there's another one that makes me realize you're watching other board meetings, so that's kind of fun, in your free time on Monday nights. We are not adopting science, and I'm guessing that's what happened here when somebody said, wait, why aren't we adopting? Yeah, we're pausing it so that we can do a more complete and rigorous pilot. However, we will hopefully be purchasing in the winter. And because it's a 6-year contract with the company, it doesn't matter if we buy it in July 1 or if we buy it December 15th, we still have to budget the funds for that whole cycle. Does that make sense?
Was it the science, or there was talk of one not costing anything?
Yeah,
as
that
well?
is, there is an option for science, and that actually gets to a question that's on here later. But it's, I mean, I could answer it now, but so for high school, we are going forward with Open Scied. Open Scied is one of the choices that's also at middle school. So it could be that we end up having another free version, but just remember that when we set aside the adoption and for books and textbooks and things, the money, first of all, we still need professional development when you have a new way to teach science. And if you saw Kate share that, it's definitely a new way to teach science. So we're going to need some professional development time. And then we also just need supplies. You know, we're going to have to make sure they have all the things they need for the labs and things like that. And there are companies who will put together some of those free materials that are, you know, here, have everything, and kind of put them in a nicer package. And so it's possible that we'll use some of that for that purpose. But then also, because it's in here, if you approve it, and I've been finding some things at high school that were surprising to me. For example, we have some incomplete curriculums that we've adopted in the past. And so if we have the opportunity to help with that and maybe get some more inquiry by design units for our ELA teachers, for example, or get some more social studies items for our social studies teachers, that would be great. But this is set aside for science and health, and then we'll just see how much that costs and go from there.
Okay, so it doesn't include the professional development training for the curriculum?
It does include that.
Not just, hey, here's all the books and all the softwares and all the things. It's to help support the teachers as well?
Absolutely.
Okay,
Yeah.
makes sense. Thank you.
And to pay for the whiteboards so the Amazon account doesn't go up.
I will make a note of that.
Yes.
I've
I'll
ordered a
pass that
lot
on.
of vertical whiteboards this year. I don't know where they're going, but let me know who needs them.
This is a fantastic question, whoever wrote it. Why do we see a drastic cut in unemployment compensation? January 2024, Senate Bill 489 changed unemployment insurance in Oregon. OCSD chose to budget for the 24-25 budget $1.2 million. We chose to apply that benefit to every single employee that it was available to. During this year, I could see that our employees were not using it at that rate. So to my best estimate, and again, it's an estimate, I'm predicting this next budget to be 70% below that number, which is why you're seeing such a drastic drop from last year's budget to this year's budget.
So number 20 is basically the same thing. We'll hopefully pilot, we will pilot in the fall, and then we're hoping to purchase in the winter. And if it's okay, I'm just going to also skip down to number 23, because that's the one I was answering a minute ago as well. And I kind of wanted to point out that even though Open Scied it did end up being the curriculum they chose, when we made this budget, we weren't sure which curriculum. And so it's also was, I didn't want to assume that we were going to get one that was lower. And I have to do the same thing for next year, because I don't know if middle school will choose Open Scied or not.
Question 21, extra duty contracts are included. So we have, as part of our CBA, there's a variety of extra duty stipends. So whether you're a team lead or a math lead, or Lisa could probably rattle off a whole bunch more extra duty contracts. And we don't always fill all of them, because we don't always need all of them. But we always want to make sure that we plan to fill them all. We're also having conversations with our union about those contracts, because it looks like they haven't moved a lot in terms of the actual expense. So that's just something for us to consider. There are more in middle and high school, because they have department leads and the math team and that sort of thing. So we see a few more of those than we would see in an elementary school setting. 22, what constitutes other non-instructional services, and why is this so high in middle compared to elementary and high school? It's outdoor school, the fee for outdoor school, which is for our sixth graders.
So I won't answer 23 again, because you've already had to have me talk about that. But 24, structured learning centers are classrooms that are designed for our students who are highly impacted by their disability. And consumable supplies could include many things, but it could be curriculum, tools, resources that would support their instruction and services. Did you want to add anything to that?
Equipment like mobility, that's actually a huge expense. I don't have my microphone, so that's not helpful to any of you. All right. So, it's specifically around any equipment or anything we have to implement accommodations or modifications for a student. These students have much more complex needs. We might have a student that moves in, for example, who needs toileting support or who needs a Hoyer lift because they might be in a wheelchair, and we need to purchase or rent that equipment. And so that is an expense that sometimes is unexpected too, and so we want to put, or it is expected, and we're like, ooh, that child had a big growth spurt, and that thing that we bought 3 years ago does not fit them anymore, and we have to go from there and purchase something more to support the student.
Is there anything going on right now or planned? Because looking at it as a big increase. Was there something that you're saying, hey, we have this need, or are we saying, well, we might, and we're just gonna stuff money in there?
We have a specific need.
Okay.
And a lot of them were broken up into multiple different, like little buckets. And then we were like, that doesn't make sense. This is for one classroom. And we went to a neighborhood school model, and they used to be separate, like our behavior-focused classroom and our structured learning center classrooms that were more focused on functional academics. Now we have neighborhood schools that are together. And so that's different as well, because they used to be different funding codes. And we're like, this is the same classroom now. So we put some of them together. That's why
Okay.
it's a bigger expense. It's not bigger, it's almost the same, but it's all of them. We organized it better and said this is where it's going to go. And it made more sense to us and how we organize allocating that.
Okay, cool, thank you.
Okay, question 25, on page 73. So this is about our high school campus security officers. So we have 4. We added a fourth one, I think, over 2 years ago. And this does support our strategic goal of student safety as they build relationships and make sure that they're connecting with kids and serving needs. And we've made a lot of additional improvements, especially at the high school, including our reflective window coverings. We have monitored our drills and make sure that everybody understands that. We've put alarm on some specific doors. We've been working on the student-teacher relationships, making sure we connect students with services, et cetera. So there's been a lot of efforts there as well.
I have a question,
Please.
or something on that as well. Those are positions at our high school, correct? So what about our at Case and then our middle schools and our elementary schools? I know we have other positions that support safety, and if you could just speak to that, because some might not know that. Like our behavioral health specialist or
Yeah.
COSAs.
Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, I actually recently had a conversation with a principal about just how they wanted to make sure that their staff was full, like that the kids were fully taken care of at, lunch and passing times and things like that. And all of our staff are doing those things, So these are specific to the high school, but we have deans at all our elementary schools. We have deans at our middle schools. We have a dean at Case. We also have IAs who, will often do recess duty, lunch duty, et cetera, which helps to keep everybody safe. And I don't know if you've seen recess, but we need some adults out there, right, to keep safety. But the behaviors that we see that might take a campus security person on the size of a campus like OCHS are really unique to that setting, right? And so I don't think that you would need the same thing for, well, first of all, it's only 350 kids at Candy Lane. It's just different. And so we have multiple positions that help kids have a safe and belonging environment and stay safe, but they're not all campus security people, as that wouldn't really be appropriate.
So back on question number 17, we had said we were using 0.5 FTE in regards to an SRO. My question is with the budget cuts that are possibly could happen at the city level, is it wise for us to keep it at 0.5, or should we look at increasing it so we have a full-time security guard that we can help out with if they're reducing their budget at Oregon City Police Department? Is it something that we can look into over here to help offset that, so that way we can guarantee having a SRO at all times?
I'm looking at Michael. I haven't heard that they're reducing thus far. We meet with them. Again, we meet with them quarterly, so we can circle back. But our last conversation with Chief Davis, they, OCPD partners by giving us one SRO, and then we have a second one. We pay half, they pay half. But I'm looking at Michael to see if he's heard something different.
No, so they, that's not something that they're willing to cut. That's something they want to continue. So that's been their message to us every time we met. They want to grow it. I mean, they'd love to have 3 SROs, but however, it's really a staffing issue. So it takes them a year to get someone on patrol. And in this last group, they lost a group of them before they finished. So that, and then also talking to our SROs, both of our SROs, one is actually retired and working back. The other one could retire next January. So their workforce right now is basically, they have 2 big goals. One is a retirement age, and then they're trying to get people in. So that's really their biggest issue, more so than even their budget. I know their budget is also an issue, but for them, they're just struggling to keep people where they need to be. Yeah, staffing. So for them, it is a priority. However, that's probably the biggest hurdle is getting to 3 is actually their current staffing. They obviously have to keep people on patrol. The nice thing about the SROs is during the summer, you don't pay them, and they're out on patrol. So that is nice for them.
I should have mentioned too that our SROs do a great job of responding to other schools, so they're not just for OCHS, they're for the district.
So is this the 2115, is that just for the high school, or is that for the entire district?
Those are just the 4 at the high school.
Okay.
Yeah.
So there's campus security, and those are classified staff members that are ours, and then separately there's SROs.
One follow-up on the comment about the middle schools and using the dean concept. Is that consistent across the state at the middle school level, or is that something unique to Oregon City?
I think it's consistent in other systems I've seen. Some have deans, some don't, to be honest, but.
But not necessarily SROs
Right.
at the middle school level?
Again, the wandering version of like, I'm going to come when you need me, or I'll come check in every couple weeks, yes. But to have one stationed at the school in a district of our demographics and et cetera, that's not something I've heard.
Yeah. I know that visual deterrent of that car parked at the front of the high school is huge. Again, we hope we never have the problem, but is there the consideration of having that presence at Gardner similar? And I think something to consider.
There are also a lot of students and families who feel intimidated by having that car out front and don't feel safer because of their experiences with the police. So there's a lot of perspectives to take into account.
Sure, there always is.
All right, question 26, page 80, why did legal services double? So legal expenses have increased, and we are also in a time where things are changing, and as executive orders from the federal government come or other things that are happening locally are occurring, we're hearing you should contact your legal counsel. It's a little different than we've heard in the past because I think that there's a lot of new, and so we just are predicting that we might need additional support, and I want to appropriately plan for it. Page 88, so there is an increase in this in our HR department because we need a budget for staff that may be on a leave via HR or temporarily assigned to other duties. So we just have to put that in our budget.
Number 28, the FTE here includes deans, instructional coaches, some of the PE teachers, some of the music teachers, and early literacy staffing. So it is an extra 1.5 FTE. Part of that is because we got double the funds in early lit for next year, or we're projected to get double the funds. And then part of it is absolutely the COLAs and steps. which impact all 27.5, not just the 1.5. So it is not, I can understand if you did the math and said, wait, why are those people getting paid so much more than everyone else? They're not. It's because that includes the increase, the money amount includes the increase for COLA and steps for the entire group of 27.5.
All right, other tuition line items. So this is, we're doing a better job tracking this, first of all, and Oxlaw, that was a charter, is now under our umbrella, but this is an allowable expense because it is under Measure 98, our high school success, where it's career and college readiness, and as we continue to partner with CCC and offer students opportunities to take those courses, it allows us to have money to hopefully engage them. So that's what that increase is for. 30.
And on that note, and touching back to what Melissa said earlier, I want you to know, under Dale's leadership, we're committed as a cabinet to be budgeting where we're spending so that we're accurately representing what's happening. We're also coaching building principals to budget for where they want their money spent. So you will see some changes as that occurs in different categories. Who are the temporary professionals for this line item, and why is the salary budget significantly increased from the previous year? This would be for the federal grant Oregon City Together. They were awarded this last year. If I'm not mistaken, their plan was to use some of the funds for staffing and contracted services. This is OCT.
Mm-hmm. Same for 31.
Also OCT's spending on question 31.
Grant indirect changes were a really good, I'm glad you saw that. We had a meeting with ODE maybe a month ago, and they said you're not taking the right amount of indirect from your I almost called them indirect, from your integrated grants. And so we had been taking the state published rate, which this year was 2.53%, but for SIA, they want us to take 5%, for high school success, 4%, and then 5% for early lit. And remember, I said a minute ago that our early lit doubled in total amount, so that means that's also going to increase from the 2.53 to the 5%. So that's where we're at right now. That's what our guidance has told us, but we've met again now with ODE, but both ODE and just other fiscal people that we work with have said this is the right move to do right now, and we'll go with it.
So in the 3100s, question 34, so we're selling more meals, so it drives up the cost of the food prices because we need more food from Sodexo, who hosts our contract. So you'll see it on the revenue side, more money coming in, and you'll see it in the expense side, more coming out related to the food. Also, with the health insurance cost is more than the classified salaries. Remember that the number of hours work during the shift affects the eligible cost or value of the health insurance. So some people don't take health insurance. Some people take health insurance for their entire family. You might have been a 5-hour, or like I was sharing with Jason today, he and I could have both worked 6 hours, and I decide I only want to work 4. He decides he only wants to work 4, and now we have to hire Lisa to work the other 4 for our lunch run. So now we have 3 employees, but it's the same amount of hours, but now we're paying health insurance for additional person. So this is one of those that we kind of pulled from our actuals and sort of rolled up. So it moves. Is the supplementing the corresponding general fund item on page 90? 2001 funds can't go that direction. We can't spend 200 funds in 100. So 100 has to cover 200 if we go in a hole, but there is no supplementing of general fund. Is this mine? I think this is yours. 30.
What is the reason for the increase in other tuition? This is an allocation for student body funds to spend on 3,000 functions if the funds are received for that purpose. Again, we will not spend it if we don't receive it.
And that could include scholarships, right?
Yeah, I think there is some scholarship money in the ASB account that they would like to move and then distribute. There's some money, but I think the intention is to gather more money and be able to spend it and give it to students. In 3390, what supplies will be acquired with the 22,000 increase over the previous year? To be honest, it's unknown. If additional funding resources for community education that might be needed for after the bell, summer camps, et cetera, this is a request by the community ed director, who feels like now that they have a year under their belt that they are going to work to expand opportunities for students. And if the increase in student participation increases, it will allow for funds to be spent if they receive that level of participation.
Why has this line increased by $477,000 in addition, with the addition over just over 1.5 FTE? This is an additional payroll related to the preschool promise grant, as well as the steps and COLAs for the staff here. Remember that 1.5 FTE is actually more hours than just 1.5 FTE. The staff here also have access to health insurance for the first time, as they were folded into the CBA. So the staff that are working in the preschool now have access to health insurance. 35, I noticed in the detailed budget a very significant increase, well over 100%, in most all PERS object codes 0210 within the 100 requirements. Could you explain this, please? It is my pleasure to explain this. Every year in the fall, the PERS board approves employer contribution rates for the upcoming biennium. OCSD rates increased for Tier 1 and Tier 2 employees from 6.36 in this biennium percent to 12.45%. Then the PERS board, as well as the state, decided to take a large reserve that PERS have and give it back to the districts. That resulted in a reduction in that 12.45 initial rate set of 1.68. The total now for Tier 1 and Tier 2 OCSD employees for the next biennium is 12.77 per year. This results in a 69.34% increase for that group. Most of them have gray hair. That's free. Sorry. I'm sorry. That it's not important. That's not important. It doesn't matter. OBSERP. They also set the OBSERP rate. This particular rate in this biennium for OCSD was 3.54%. This one increased to 9.27%. Subtract the 1.68 given back to us. But the total of 7.59 resulted in 115% increase. So the percent of OBSERP and the percent of Tier 1, Tier 2 within a function or a change of the blend of them will have a varied effect on the percent of increase on the object code 0210 for that function. So, back to the bottom part of that sentence that asked, can you explain, with the notable exception of 2321 when there's only a 23% increase. So in that function, I only have 2 full-time FTE. So if one of them were to change out from OBSERP to Tier 1 or 2 by employee, it's going to affect the total. if the switch goes the other way, you're going to get a lot more of a percent. So it mellows out a bit when you get 96 FTE in there. But that particular one, depending on who I traded out for the FTE, you might get a larger impact on the percent.
36.
I really like that last question, too. 36, inversely, well, it took me a while. Inversely, it was a good question. Inversely, workers' comp code, object code 0231 in most areas has significant decreases. Please explain. I made an adjustment based on actual usage and actuals. So I just looked at what was actually happening and moved the percent down to match what we were using.
All right, 37, are there specific object codes for athletic expenses, maintenance, purchase services, et cetera? Yes, there are. They're not object codes. What's the next one? Object, location, sub-account. So this is something our athletic director tracks, so she can tell you how much we spent on buses for volleyball versus buses for softball. It's not in this account this way because you don't see that level of detail, but it is something that we track. In regards to the middle school extracurricular budget decreasing, so at the middle and high school, one of the allowable expenses for extracurriculars, especially if they're improving a well-rounded education, so whether we have chess club or theater club or running club, it's an allowable expense out of SAA funds, and it allows us to offer some of those free of charge to kids. So you'll see it in other accounts as well. So it looks like a decrease in general fund, but it is offset by the use of additional funds out of SAA. In elementary schools and our 5 elementary schools, we can also use Title I funds to offer some of those after-school activities, whether it's coding. I think Holcomb had some really cool ones. They had coding and chess club and battle of the books and those sorts of things. So 38, page 65, explain the higher budget of $65,000, review the last time gate fees were raised to cover expenses. So this was actually something that we were watching, and there was a prediction that as we saw more people coming to the games, that we would see an increase in our budget. So we kind of predicted high last year. That didn't come to fruition. It seemed like people were already coming, so we kind of went back and adjusted it to actuals. The Three Rivers League has a standard operating procedure agreement that sets the costs, and they will meet again in June. So they, as a league, might decide to increase the fee, but at this point, we stay in alignment with the league. Same thing for line 1745 and 1746, and this is for fees related to participating, even at middle and high school sports. And we did increase the fee last year to be in line with other districts in the league. Again, this is something that's kind of set across the league. And the amount of revenue we get varies with the number of students who qualify for free and reduced lunch because their fees are waived, or family needs. We make adjustments to make sure every student has access to play. So that's that.
Hey, real quick on that, is that fee increase, is that like a 5-year schedule? How far out did you go on that schedule exercise? Or was this a one-time exercise to increase fees? Did you mentioned that last year you worked on
Oh, yeah, we were just estimating, and again, that's just an estimated revenue that we were expecting, but then we adjusted it. So again, we don't spend the money if we don't get the money, and so we were just hearing that we thought that more people would be coming and paying that fee. So, and we increased the way that they could pay for the fee with using our cards and such. So that was an estimate, the $65,000. We don't usually predict out multiple years. We just kind of look at the actuals and then predict for the next year.
Were you asking about the 65,000? Weston?
I was on 1745 and 46, so those are the fees, high school athletic fees, middle school athletic fees.
Oh, yes. Yes, so that's set by the league, the Three Rivers League.
Just like the gate fees are?
No, the.
Because I thought this like the participation, to participate in sports, you have whatever that is.
Yeah, it costs $225 or what have
Yeah.
you. Yeah, and so our athletic director said that they try to stay in alignment with the other districts, so they have that conversation as a
Okay.
league. Yeah, and so they just adjusted them last year. She wasn't expecting that they would adjust them this year, but they do have their meeting in June.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
So like you heard from Melissa and Jason, we did really try to clean up 0470, which is several questions on this page, and it's really about the computer software. So what we tried to do, instead of saying we're going to have a K-12 math adoption and we're just going to put it all in one bucket, we tried to say, okay, what was the actual amount we spent on the textbooks? What was the actual amount we spent on computer software? What was the actual amount we spent on PD, et cetera, et cetera. And so where we got much better this coming year is the computer software piece. And so you'll see, it looks like we spent nothing, and then now we're going to spend a bunch, but actually it's because it ended up just in the adoption line item instead of as the curriculum software. Additionally, when we had ESSER funds, which were coming from the federal government, we prepaid for some things that were allowable in the computer software land, and next year we're out of prepayments. So we needed to make sure we budgeted for that.
I want to go back to 40 because Sarah skipped my question.
My apologies. I got excited.
She's so excited.
Page 65, lines 1831 and 1841, please explain the zero proposed budget amounts. This is our desire. I wanted all the revenue and all the expenses for driver's ed and athletic fees as it relates to Oregon City, community ed fees, to be in the 200s. I did not want them mixed, part in 100, part in 200, hoping to be able to see, I want them all in one ledger, all revenue and all expenses in one ledger, preschool, after the bell, the fees for the sports, and the driver's ed. So that's why you see 0 and 100. Page 68, line 0391, officials and referees, verify that this budget is correct given the higher cost in 23-24. Fees are paid from a variety of buckets. It may need to be increased. As always, these are estimates, and I placed the 3 function codes where there is money. It is spread out a bit. There's $3,000 budgeted in function 1122. There's 30,000. Those are both in the general fund. And then in the 200s, in the student body, there's 10,000. But to the point of the question asker, this may need to be increased.
All right, question 43. Are we hanging in? Anybody need a break? Okay. 43, consumable supplies for high school are supplemented through the student investment account funds as class fees were eliminated. That was part of the student investment account. They wanted all students to have access. So there's no $20 for clay fee and $15 for your recorder or what have you. And so it is part of the expense. It comes in through the 200s. Sarah's got 44.
So that particular line, we adopted a new curriculum resource for use in the structured classrooms, which again are for students who have a significant impact of their disability, and it ensures that all staff, paraprofessionals, and students have access. As we go down, these are the 470s that I was talking about, and when we get down to number 46, I can just keep going. This is our CPR and first aid trainings, which are required every 2 years. There's an online portion that you take, and then, which of course we have to pay for, and then you come in person and do the final sort of test, and then the instructors also have to be obviously trained to be able to provide that. And we are required to have a certain number, Melissa would know it off the top of her head, per building. 1 to every 60 students, since her microphone is fidgety.
I could also touch it. But there's a reason of difference with that too, because first aid CPR went under community ed for a while, and then now we have it back, and our nurses are doing it, and so we're, that line item had to increase because of the amount of people that we were training, and to get back into compliance for the 1 to 60 ratio.
I did it. It was great. I am trained. I have my card. So good. Okay, page 78. So there's a question about why there's a zero budget. The 0341 and 0342 can be interchangeable, so we're not, you want to look at them as a group together. And keep in mind that we, again, may not have out-of-district travel for professional development next year if we don't have enough funds to pay for registrations, et cetera. One of the biggest things that we do that's out of the district, out of the state actually, has been AVID training. And in years past, there was a Nike grant that paid for that all across the country, and people went and they stayed in San Diego and they had a great 5-day training, or 4 days. Awesome experience. And this year, we didn't have that grant, and our AVID district coordinator was able to find a number of registrations last summer for us for free, but the travel was not free. So even with a number of free registrations, we spent $60,000 on just sending some people to AVID. So this year, one of the things that we've done to mitigate that is they opened a more local one, probably because every district is having similar budget issues, but also because the Nike grant went away. And so we are sending a team, but they're going to go to Beaverton, which is not as cool as San Diego, but it'll be great, and they can be home at night with their families, and I think it'll be a really good experience. Some people actually said, oh, well, I can go now because it's close, and they hadn't gone before. So we are doing it, but it's going to look a little different.
I think question 50 we've kind of already covered in terms of legal fees and the potential increased need.
Page 80, line 0470, again, we wanted the budget to reflect current spending. We are considering a few new management systems for managing the district's documents.
Okay.
I think this is me too.
I'm sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
I need to go back
Yeah.
to Dr. Dale. I know you already said it, and you just rephrased it, but why are legal fees? I know they're hard to predict because you don't know when something's going to happen, and then is it going to be a 2-month issue, a 4-month issue? But this is twice somebody's brought it up. Like, what do you see? Is it our new administration that's causing problems with how we write grants? What legal fees? That's going to be more prevalent now than 5 years ago or 2 years ago. I'm not understanding that.
Yeah. So I would say most of our guidance that we get in terms of things that might be changing, we usually get from Oregon School Boards Association or our local Oregon Department of Education. Even just in the last 3 or 4 months, we've seen some executive orders come from the federal level.
Okay.
And as we ask, well, what does that mean? Like, how should we handle that? They say, you should contact your legal counsel. Because it's so new, and we're not exactly sure what we need to do as a state and what's our resources as a state versus what the federal government is saying. And then at the school level, like, every school district is kind of unique, and so they're saying you need to you need to reach out to legal counsel.
Okay.
And so we're hearing that a lot, and even just in the conversations that we've had about like for the fall, and we're looking at different resources, and will we get Title II, and will we cut this, and what have you, and they're like, well, you should plan, and you should think about things, and you might want to make sure that you have a strong legal counsel representative to advise you in your district, in your unique situation.
Okay.
Yeah.
I hear what you're saying.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Page 82, this is number 52, line 0241. Please explain the large increase. If you will look to the previous year's budget on page 82, in function 2520 and add the object 0140, the health insurance stipend, to the previous year 0241, you actually have a slight decrease. So all that to say, this can be taken as a stipend or be a straight cost. So you have to add those two to get the dollar amount.
Question about the health insurance. How is that, who negotiates that and how often? Like the rates, the, who they go with, if we're stuck with MOTA for the rest of our lives, or?
It is negotiated annually, and usually there's representatives that look at the insurance policies that we get from Kaiser and from OWEB and bring them back. And then we review and give people the option of what's offered.
Is that a union or a district?
It is a district.
Okay, good. I mean, thank you.
53, page 83, line 2541, object 0420, please explain the large increase. I'm not sure if this was a mistake or not, but the $400 increase is for a software resource for the operations department. Number 54, page 83.
The I is me, for the record there.
Oh, is the 400, it did?
I think that was a mistake. I don't know why I would have brought up $400. I think I was just on a roll with the 470.
I wanted to be truthful to you, so I put it in there.
And I was going to make a point earlier, maybe I'll make it based on this. One thing that I was just looking for is a significant increase or decrease, right? Just not even looking at what the subject was. It might make sense in future sessions of this to have a percentage column off to the right, so you could just quickly see if there was a significant change from previous year, just as an analysis point for us that don't know that, to kind of pick those out easier, rather than kind of doing that, that visual look. So just an idea.
Yeah, and that's good. I am required by the budget law to have all three columns and the previous year. So if I'm not careful, it will get.
Understood.
You're going to have to make it fit on the page. So I want it to also be clean as possible.
Sure.
But,
Hey, Jason, just give us a spreadsheet. A giant spreadsheet. We're good with that.
If you just send the Excel file, we can add columns, so.
Yeah, I have one.
We'll make our own, we'll make
It has
our own statistics.
37,000 lines of code, so it does lock up sometimes, but.
Michael, do you want to talk about 54?
I wrote it over to the right. So we have been working with the company to transition over our lights. We've done a lot at the high school, the parking lot, the ones in the fields, and then we're slowly moving those over. There's different types of programs. Some you pay up front, some you pay after. The one that facilities has been working with, we only have to pay the difference, which has been advantageous, because otherwise you're, like most of the grant programs, you actually pay, then you get a reimbursement. Often, sometimes the reimbursements come with catches as well that have to go towards capital as well. And so, you initially paid for it with the general fund, then the rebate actually becomes a capital. And so then you keep rolling that forward. So that's what we have been doing, and I have passed this on to the facilities as well this night, so we appreciate it.
If you were to guess, how far along the path are you to the LED retrofit? So
So the middle schools are done.
Okay.
Right, we did all the offices in the last, on 2018, so it's offices, middle schools. And so, I mean, probably a quarter of the way third. Right, and so then then the next fund will take all the elementary schools. So then we'll just have the high school and then case, slot, maybe we'll get that as well, depends on what happens there. So we're getting pretty close. We'll probably have less than a third left, maybe a quarter left at the end. Those are definitely doable with facilities.
And did you mention that the fields were on the list for the lighted fields?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, it'll be interesting to watch the overall electric cost to see if that flattens out, because it isn't yet.
Electrical costs will not go down. We'll hopefully use less, but the cost will go up. So this year we just got our PGE analysis. We used 1% less this not fiscal year, calendar year than the year before, but our bill still went up. So because of the increasing cost of energy, not only do you have to use less, you have to use way less than you did the year before to actually save anymore. So right now, we're trying to stay neutral almost, basically, right? So luckily, we got the middle schools in there, that's really saved us a ton, so we're using less energy, but the cost of energy is going up. So even if you use less in your house, you might be paying more than you did last year. Because every year, and they've already told us for next year, it's gonna go up again.
Yeah.
So they do tell us way in advance, so we are able to kind of budget that. We're trying to do our best to bring that down, but unfortunately, we can't drop it faster than it's going up.
Yeah, understood.
So it's good.
Okay, page 83, line 352 on care and upkeep of buildings for consumable supplies. So we have multiple areas that we can access for supplies, including our 200 funds and construction excise tax funds, which are in the 400s. So part of the reason that this looks kind of flat in general is because we also expect that via our bond work, we won't have to do as much repairs to our elementary schools because they're all going to get renovated. I feel like our director of operations, not operations maintenance, Tom, he implemented a new tool called Megamations, and it's basically a platform that allows people to put their work orders. So I feel like he has a pretty good grasp on what needs to be done in our buildings and has kind of metered it out in terms of the ability of his team to do the work. So I would say he would probably say, I think Michael would agree, that one of his limiting factors is just the number of people to do more work, that if we increase the amount of money we put in there, we'd have to increase the size of his team, and we've already increased a little bit. So we're making improvements, but I agree with you. Maintaining our buildings is super important.
I have a question to that.
Sure.
Did the facilities, Tom, ask for more help? I know at one point we were looking for a limited liability electrician. We just couldn't hire anybody because there was nobody that wanted to take.
So we struggled to have a team big enough and that's qualified. So, so there's only 5 guys for the whole district. We've had 4 the entire year. So there is that. So what happens is we contract out a lot, right? So a lot of that work has to be contractors. Even last summer, we posted for summer work. Even right now, I think we got 2 people that are willing to work this summer. It's been open, so people apply. So we're willing to take more people, we just don't have a lot of willing people to do the work. So that means we have to use contractors to get that done, which we can, we do. Also, contractors are very busy, and so we have to make sure that we get on our list. So usually those are more emergency types of situations. But we did have like painting done last summer as we got this done ready. We had to use contractors for that, to get that done in time.
I will also add, if you look at the FTE in the 3542, I think is it 3 additional sub-custodians that were hired?
For custodial.
Yeah, yeah.
So maintenance by custodial, we've added some
Mm-hmm.
to get more of that routine stuff done.
Right.
And to also cover for all of the absences that we were talking about, covering all those substitutes. We also have that custodial as well.
Yeah.
So if there's no sub-custodians, then those, if we have a school with 2 custodians and one's out, there's nobody there, right? If we don't have these subs to come in. And often those subs, a lot of our subs have day jobs and they come and they'll work like 3 more hours or 4 more hours, which is awesome. Grateful for that.
Is there in the question, is this contract, you said it's contractors, but just like our teachers, I'll just generalize teachers administration, they have a union contract. These contractors, are they union or non-union, or is it an approved apprenticeship, or?
Yeah, most of them are union shops, yeah. And they're regular. There's only certain ones that typically work on schools for like HVAC. There's just a handful of them, but we don't access.
Okay. Thank you.
56, page 85, line 0470, please explain the increase. Software used by transportation for our mechanics, parent/student communication, et cetera.
And that is 70% reimbursable. That was, Bus Right is one of the tools the board may remember. We approved that.
57, page 86, function 2558, line 0417, please explain the zero budget. All gas costs are coded together on line 25540417.
So on that, if you're rolling that up to 2554, you have 500,000 in your proposed budget.
Yeah.
But last year, you had it in two spots at 7, you had 575 plus 200,000. So are you anticipating gas costs to go down?
They weren't using anything in the 200, and so I was trying to tighten things up. And year-to-date actuals plus encumbrances right now is 415, total, everything.
Okay.
So we're pacing that, because it's a projected budget, we were pacing it at the inflation rate of fuel, and then fuel did not spike.
Yep.
Actually went down, so that was part of it.
I thought it might be what we were going through last year, so, okay.
Last page, everybody, last page.
Number 58, page 87, 2572, purchasing services. Where was this budget reallocated? Or was the department eliminated? We consolidated the FTE into 2520 fiscal services as the department was restructured. Some funding went to support the restructuring and the processing of leaves, which affects fiscal and HR. Number 59, page 89, line 2664. These are subscription services that cover cybersecurity, safety, and web management. Now that we are one-to-one, this was covered by ESSER in the past. Number 60, page 110, line 201-3110-0385. Please explain the large increase. More meals sold creates a cost increase that we have to pay for the food as an expense. The goal of the revenue and the expenses in nutrition services is zero. This is all run through the ODE nutrition services process. We do an RFP that covers 5 years. Each year, we do look at the contract and decide whether we will continue with the current food management company. We could decide to go out for another RFP, but we would have to explain why we are making a change to Sodexo. Last time, we only had 3 companies submit proposals, and Sodexo was the least expensive. Number 61. Page 119, line 424-2510, please explain this service and how the budget was established. We used a competitive bidding process, and OTEC was awarded the contract. If OTEC CM Services was there a competitive bid? So the answer is yes, there was a competitive bid process. The budget is not to exceed the amount based on estimates of anticipated effort on the described scope of work in the competitive RFP. This service provides project and program and project management services for the bond program. There was something else earlier that I wanted to point out too. Dale did say this, but I want to be crystal clear to those of you that may have questions. On page 122, at the bottom in function 7,000, no matter the usage rate of the bond money, it is all there. So if you were to need it, it's there. It's all budgeted in here. everything that hasn't been estimated for on the expense side is in the ending fund balance in this budget.
What other questions do you have?
Well, I'd just like to make a comment. Thank you very much for the transparency and obviously very in-depth answers. I think it was almost felt like I was doing an audit more than anything else, but it was that test of, okay, can you explain all these? And you did a great job. Thank you.
I had a good time.
Jason, you've now explained PERS to me about 15 times. Can you do it again, please? Because I'm still a little...
Go for it, even 16, let's go.
I'd like it if you could explain how you can get the PERS number down. If you can do that. Like, it's killing us.
I do have some good news for you.
Oh, I like good news. Thanks.
The final payment for the 2004 money that Oregon City School District borrowed will be made at the end of '28. At that moment, half of what is budgeted in the PERS UAL payment line will go away. At this moment in time, we're paying both the increase for the lack of the actuary's ability to do math. Actually, they figured for a 3.4% increase, and we gave more than that. But regardless, there's not very many months left before the end of '28. That's why the increase is there, and it goes biennial. Just know that. That's good news in the future. Right now, we're making both the payment on the mortgage money, the borrowed money, and we're paying an increase for the lack of ability for it to do its work because it's getting so small. So that is a lining that I don't want you to forget about. That is a big, because the payment is fixed no matter how many people work here. So that's the risk side of it. So that part's positive. It will go down at that point.
I have a question.
Work. Thank you.
Other than dollar amounts, what other aspects are taken into consideration when you do consider alternates for food management companies?
There's a whole rubric that goes through. So the RFP states all the different things. So menus is actually run through the state. So nutrition is heavily there's a lot of rules that go through the state. Everything we do has to be looked at by the state and approved. We monitor everything by the state. So the menus, all the ingredients, every product that the kids go to, all of that goes through there. So we have a committee that comes together that, it's just formed at the time of the RFP. So every 5 years, we try and get a diverse group. So like teachers, students if we can get them, anyone we can basically get. Usually it's around 8 people. And then I usually just facilitate it. Usually I've only done once. So, basically that's how that goes, and then they score. But the state says the highest weighted amount does go towards the price, but that is only one element. There are other elements, and so, it's a big, huge binder. That's the RFP, so they have to produce a lot of things. Everything from how to promote the food, how they educate, how they interact in the schools, all of the, how do they train their staff, all of those things are in there. Do they use scratch cooking, do they not? All of those things are in there. And then each of those kind of subcategories has a score, and so then each of the committee members reads it on a rubric, we total it, look at all those across, and then whoever got the best one gets the award, basically. And then we have to send all those scores to the state to make sure that we did it right. Then all the other companies, they want to see those scores and how we score them so that they can compete. Because they do this for every district, so they want to be competitive, and then they also want to see what's the next one. So it's a pretty intensive process that we wouldn't do every year. But we could if we wanted to. But each year, though, everything changes, right? So the cost of food, all of those things, so they have to redo their budget. So, and again, it has to be cost neutral. So they have to basically they're waiting to see kind of what how much our staffing is, things like that, and then they put a budget together. And then in June, coming up, I'll present to the board the new budget. It'll increase the price of meals that it will cost from Sodexo, because it costs them more. And then the board will approve that if they want to, yes or no. And then we go for another year. And then after 5 years, you have to do another RFP. We're in the
Okay, so this is for the public comment to me over the weekend. The public perception is we're admin heavy, we're admin heavy, we're admin heavy. So I know that being on the board, we kept staff at full through COVID. And then you came on and you worked really diligently to right-size all of our staff. Can you say you did the same with the administration?
I would say there were some areas that I didn't feel we were appropriately staffed. Case in point, our human resources team. I think we needed to update some things. Our processes for hiring, our processes for investigations. There was definitely a need there, so I would say that was an add. We also added Candace Hankin as the early literacy lead. We had to have somebody lead that because of the tentacles that were associated with that. There was nobody that had the bandwidth to lead that, and it's a very technical grant. It requires a lot of professional development and working with outside contractors, that sort of thing. The limits on that grant are such that we can't hire teachers out of that. So she was also an add. I would say in the last couple years, we've reduced the APs at the high schools, which is a cost savings. I think coming out of COVID, the theory was that we might need additional staffing to catch up, or additional administrative staffing to catch up on evaluations and such, which is one of the primary reasons for administration. But beyond that, I think that's been status quo. So I think we are as lean as we can be to maintain a high-quality program and support our school system and our staff to meet the needs that we are outlining in our strategic plan. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Any other questions before we get into?
I have one more. So you talked at the beginning about not knowing for sure on the 11.4 billion in that. So I'm sure you're already thinking about, okay, what do we do if we don't get that? So in general terms, where would you look to reduce our expenses if we don't receive that significant portion of that 11.4?
Yeah, so I would say in conversation with our team and our leadership and our teachers, we've been around and had conversations. I think class size is kind of their largest concern, and I've been pretty clear with all of them that I can't find anybody in the Portland metro area that's under 30 to 1, especially in secondary. We're at 28.5 to 1. Part of the reason that we are trying to hold so tight to that is we are changing our schedule at the high school level, and we want to be offering our kids opportunities for electives and access to more CTE courses, and that is all dependent on FT, so we're holding tight to that. Around 80% of our funding goes straight to staff across our district, so it would have to be staff reductions. So we are looking at all layers of staff reductions if the 11.4 doesn't come through, but we're keeping our fingers crossed.
So is that the same conversation if we get more? Would you try to further reduce the class size? Would that be the first place you would start?
I'm going to be honest, I haven't dreamed that way. I mean, we've had conversations about like, wow, we have a lot of needs. We've mostly been in trimming land, but I do think that we have a whole list of things that our principals would like to add and expand and enrich in order to offer opportunities for kids. So I would assume that that would be true.
Thank you.
Any other questions? No? So now we're going to move into our discussion. Just after 8 o'clock, do you all have enough information to vote for the budget? Do we need more time? Push this to June 2nd. So what I'm moving towards is we have three different options. We can vote to approve as proposed. We can vote to postpone this to June 2nd, or vote to add or decrease the appropriations and approve. So if no further discussion, is there a motion to approve as proposed? Okay,
So, yeah, I have discussion.
great.
So last year when I was on this committee, this is my second year, I kind of was blindsided when we got to this point, and I didn't realize that we had to increase the budget by a certain percentage. I was like, oh. And I don't know why that was blindsided by that, or why I didn't see that happening, or why no one said, hey, by the way, our budget, when we approve this, we're going to have to increase it by I don't even know the dollar amount. It was a lot. So I guess I'm asking right now, in this proposed budget, how much more are we asking if we were to take it as is than what it was? Is that a question that's appropriate, or do we know that answer?
There's been no change in this budget since its proposal. Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, so, yes.
No change
Okay.
than what was proposed to you.
Okay, that's what I wanted to know. Thank you.
Are there going to be any new data points between now and June 2nd? Any updates that we're anticipating that would change significant portions of this?
I have heard that, well, we know that the state has to adopt their budget before June 30th. I have heard that they are expecting the state to adopt their budget either next week or the following week, but they don't think it will be the last 2 weeks in June. But again, we haven't heard, there's no slated date for a vote.
Because that would be my, in discussion, the only reason not to approve tonight would be if we knew more on June 2nd that would make a more informed decision.
We do not know that we will know more by then.
No.
Okay.
And I will say what I'm hearing is that we should be actively reaching out to our legislators to try to get to the 11.4. I think that they think the 11.4 is sort of the optimal pie in the sky sort of amount. They're hoping that we hold on to it. So I would assume that that's best case scenario. I don't think we'll get above that, which I would assume that would be an interest. Like, where would we put additional money if we got it? Yeah.
Yep. We can say pretty definitively that the budget is not going to be out by June 2nd.
So I think that's what you're saying. If we don't know what the state budget is, how can we approve this budget? If we don't know, I mean, there's a lot of variables. We all know there's so many variables. We know that part of the budget. So how can we honestly want to approve this budget if we don't know how much the state's going to give us? And I don't think we've done well, if the state gives us this much, we can do this. If the state gives us what we're asking for, then this is what we're going to do. I'd like to get that answer first before I want to approve a budget.
I don't think we're ever going to get that.
I think what they're doing is they're looking at budgeting for the top level of like the optimal thing that we're going to do. And so when you budget for that and you're approved at a budget for that amount, you can spend up to that amount. And so if it comes in lower, they know they can't go above that. If the funds aren't there, they're not going to spend it. And I think that that's where the adjustment is, and that's the misconception, is the fact that you have a budget, you're here, we're approving it at this much, meaning if we get that optimal amount, then they have the ability to spend the funds all the way to that top dollar. If they don't have the funds, they're not going to spend the funds and put us in a hole. So I think that's probably the thought process.
Thank you. That I understand. Thank you.
That's something that Jason has said quite a bit and very adamant about not going above that line, so.
It's a biennium problem, right? Because every time we're at this point and it's long session,
Yeah.
we have to have our budget done, basically before they have to have their budget done. So it happens to every district, every beginning of the biennium. Next year will be a lot easier. Maybe.
So it's like, so I'm on a limited duration position with the state agency, which expires technically on June 30th. So I've been told that I have a job, but the budget hasn't passed yet. So that's how I know pretty definitively it won't be June 2nd. Pay very close attention.
So we'll go with the options. If we don't have enough, or if we don't have a motion or a second or enough to vote as proposed, we'll go to the second option, which is to move the meeting to June 2nd and try it again. So do I hear a motion to approve as proposed?
I motion to approve budget as proposed.
I'll second.
Holly?
Director Blackwell?
Aye.
Mr. York?
Aye.
Mr. Frazier?
Aye.
Director Canchola?
Aye.
Director Hayes?
Aye.
Director Wilson?
Aye.
Mr. Reel?
Aye.
Ms. Rodway?
Yes, aye.
Ms. Klepadek?
Aye.
Director Halpern?
Aye.
Director Stroh?
Aye.
Mr. Stobie?
Aye.
Motion carries.
So the budget has been approved by the Budget Committee.
Thank you, Mr. Jensen.
Can I say a few things? First of all, I just want to thank you all for the great questions, and thank you for them in advance. I know sometimes that feels like it's inauthentic, but what it allows us to do is make sure we have really good answers. So I appreciate that in advance. Please know you can always ask questions at any time and encourage people to ask questions. You have waded through this with us, which we really appreciate, and you know it's clear as mud, and it is messy as mud. And so we don't mind answering the questions, but what we want to do is change the narrative in our district. Two, we have money. We spend it in targeted ways to focus on students and their needs, and we are responsible and transparent with the way we budget. So anything you can do to help us advance that, or feedback for us to advance that, we welcome that, and we really thank you for your time and commitment to this committee.
Dale, if a staff has a budget question, obviously we direct them to their supervisor. Is there another place to go for that as well?
Yeah. Jason's happy to answer them. Any of our cabinet team's happy to answer them. I've had a couple staff members reach out to me, which I love. I mean, again, mostly what we're hearing right now is the PERS. It's also very confusing, but we're happy to answer any questions at all.
Thank you.
I want to say thanks to everybody, including the board, staff, for all the work you've done to get this budget to us, and being open to answer all 61 plus questions. So I appreciate it. And absolutely. With that, this meeting is adjourned.